Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on a truly delightful and surprisingly profound journey. A deep dive into the unexpected wisdom of the Hundred Acre Wood.
Right.
Imagine, if you will, a world where a bear obsessed with honey, a bouncing tiger, a gloomy donkey, and, well, an overly intellectual owl actually hold the keys to ancient spiritual wisdom.
It sounds almost absurd when you put it like that.
It does. Yes, you heard me right. We're talking about Winnie the Pooh, and specifically Benjamin Hoff's incredible book, The Tao of Pooh. It's a classic for a reason, and we're going to really get into why. Okay, let's unpack this. How could Pooh, of all characters, possibly hold the key to understanding something as, well, deep and complex as Taoism? It's a premise that, on the surface, might make you chuckle, right? But as we'll discover, it's packed with insights that resonate with spiritual teachings from across millennia.
It really is.
Our mission today is to use the familiar, charming, and often hilariously simple world of the Hundred Acre Wood to explore the core principles of Taoism, like that idea of effortless action and, natural flow.
A natural flow, yeah.
We're going to contrast Pooh's approach with the pitfalls of overthinking and excessive cleverness as embodied by his more clever friends, Rabbit and Owl.
Ah, yes. Rabbit and owl. Classic examples.
Definitely. And we're not stopping there. We'll connect these Pooh-inspired ideas to a stack of diverse spiritual sources, from ancient texts like the Tao Te Ching and the Bhagavad Gita to modern insights from the power of now and conversations with God.
A really rich mix.
Get ready for some serious aha moments, because the joy of discovering profound wisdom in unexpected places, well, that's what we live for on the Deep Dive.
What's truly fascinating here, beyond the sheer charm of the Hundred Acre Wood, is how universal these spiritual principles truly are. They are capable of being seen in a children's story, then illuminated further by texts from across millennia, from the foundational Tao Te Ching to, like you said, contemporary insights from the power of now.
It's amazing how they connect.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it strongly suggests that fundamental truths are often hidden in plain sight, just waiting for the right perspective, the right lens to be revealed. Hoff's work really gives us that lens, showing us that the most profound wisdom doesn't always come wrapped in academic prose or solemn ritual. Sometimes it comes with a hum and, well, a craving for honey.
Absolutely.
It's about stripping away the layers of intellectualization to find the simple, essential truth underneath it all.
So let's really dive into the heart of Pooh's unique wisdom then. The concept of wu-wei. It's one of those terms that I think often gets misinterpreted as pure inaction, as in just doing nothing at all. What's the biggest misconception you think people have about it, and how does Pooh help us see it differently?
That's a fantastic question, and you've absolutely hit on the core misunderstanding right there. Wu-wei is almost universally misconstrued as passivity, as if it encourages, idleness or laziness.
Right, just letting things happen to you.
Exactly. But it's actually about a profound kind of action act that is perfectly aligned with the natural order, devoid of struggle, force, or anxiety. It's intelligent, effortless engagement rather than forceful struggle.
Okay, so it's smarter action in a way.
You could say that. Think of it like a skilled carpenter. They don't fight the wood. They understand its grain, its strengths, its natural tendencies, and they work with it. Or, perhaps more simply, consider water flowing around a rock. It doesn't fight the rock. It simply flows around it, finding the path of least resistance. Yet still moving forward with incredible power and effectiveness. It's about working with the current, not against it.
So it's not about being lazy, but about being efficient and in harmony. That makes sense. And the Tao Te Ching seems to connect this to an idea of inherent purity, doesn't it, with the concept of the uncarved block.
Absolutely. The Tao Te Ching in verse 28 introduces this powerful concept of the uncarved block. It's a beautiful metaphor, really.
Yeah.
Imagine a pristine block of wood, perfect in its natural state, before any sculptor has touched it. It holds all possibilities, untouched by external definitions or complex designs. It's raw, pure potential.
Okay.
The text says something like, embracing everything, it returns one to the uncarved block. But the sage holds the block complete. Holding all things within himself, he preserves the great unity, which cannot be ruled or divided.
Wow.
So this uncarved block represents simplicity, wholeness, and unmanipulated state. It's about returning to our essential nature, free from the complexities and artificial constructs we impose upon ourselves in the world.
And that's exactly where Pooh comes in as the perfect embodiment of simplicity. It's almost ironic, isn't it? We're often told to be smart, to think things through. But Pooh, with his self-proclaimed bear of very little brain, seems to navigate life with such grace. How do you see that not as a deficiency, but as a profound strength when we talk about Wu Wei and the Uncarved Block?
It's his greatest asset, honestly. His bare of very little brain isn't a deficiency at all from this perspective. He hasn't been carved by the anxieties of achievement or the demands of cleverness.
Right.
He simply exists in his own natural whole state. He doesn't overthink. He doesn't complicate things unnecessarily. Remember the time he got stuck in Rabbit's front door?
Oh, yeah. Classic Pooh.
Classic Pooh.
Hmm.
He didn't panic or start drawing up complex escape plans. He just, well, he accepted his predicament, even humorously asking Christopher Robin to read him a sustaining book while he waited to become thin enough to get out.
Just waited it out.
That's Pooh. He just is. And in that being, he allows natural processes to unfold without internal struggle. This lack of complex, ego-driven thought allows him to embody naturalness in a way that often eludes his more intellectual friends.
Like rabbit or owl.
Exactly. He acts spontaneously, follows his nature, which often involves honey, and often achieves his goals almost by accident, simply because he isn't getting in his own way.
That's a powerful illustration. And this innate simplicity brings us to a crucial aspect of Wu Wei, the acceptance of what is and living in the now. Pooh's accepting nature perfectly illustrates the idea of surrender, not as resignation, but as a powerful inner phenomenon. It's about yielding to life.
Precisely. Eckhart Tolle, in The Power of Now, describes surrender as the simple but profound wisdom of yielding to rather than opposing the flow of life.
Yielding, not giving up.
Exactly. This isn't about passively putting up with undesirable situations or giving up hope. It's about accepting the present moment unconditionally, without inner resistance. It's about saying yes to the isness of this moment, which then allows for positive action without the mental judgment or emotional negativity that often accompanies resistance. Think about the energy we waste fighting against reality, wishing things were different. Pooh rarely does that. If it rains, well, it rains. If he's hungry, he finds honey. He deals with the now.
And it's not just a fleeting thought for Pooh. He truly lives in the eternal present moment. This profound state of now is something spiritual traditions across the ages have really emphasized, haven't they?
Exactly. Conversations with God puts it so starkly, telling us something like, the present moment is the only reality. Stay there.
Wow. That's direct.
It is. It's
Yeah.
a radical idea when you consider how much of our mental energy is spent either reliving the past or anxiously anticipating the future. The text emphasizes that now is all there is, and that the past and future are essentially figments of your imagination, constructions of your mind, non-existent in ultimate reality.
And Pooh, bless his cotton-filled heart, seems to grasp this implicitly, doesn't he? Think of him enjoying a smackerel of honey. He's utterly engrossed.
Totally present.
Totally present. He's not fretting about yesterday's spilled pot or anxiously planning his next meal 5 steps ahead. His simple existence, free from the mental clutter of past regrets or future anxieties, keeps him firmly anchored in the only moment that truly exists. This isn't just a quaint observation about a children's character. It's a profound challenge to how we often live. For us, how much energy do we expend replaying old conversations or rehearsing future scenarios? Pooh reminds us that this mental time travel often pulls us away from the richness of the now. He's simply here, which is profound when you think about it.
And this deep acceptance, this yielding to the flow, well, it aligns one with a greater, perhaps even divine purpose. A Course in Miracles speaks of God's meaning waits in the kingdom. It belongs there, as you do.
Okay.
It suggests that by accepting our true nature, by letting go of our attempts to control and manipulate everything, we align with this inherent meaning and purpose. This unforced state, this letting go of self-will, is something echoed in profound spiritual texts across history.
Like which ones?
For instance, the anonymous 14th century mystical work, Theologia Germanica, describes a truly humble person as one who seeks only to know how he may please God and become as naught in himself, having no will of their own, really.
Becoming as naught, that's strong.
It is. It's about letting the eternal will live through you, having full possession of him, as the text says. This parallels Pooh's unforced state beautifully. He has no grand will of his own, only simple desires that arise naturally, making him a vessel for natural flow without even trying. He just is, and in that being, he aligns. It just happens.
So if Pooh isn't striving, he's also not burdened by ego, which is another key aspect of this natural flow we're talking about. His unpretentious nature, his whole bare of very little brain identity, actually reflects a remarkable freedom from ego-driven identity. He's just Pooh, period. No need to prove anything, no need to be anything other than himself.
Indeed. Ram Dass. And be here now vividly describes a moment of profound love he experienced that, as he put it, washed away all the guilt and shame, the unconscious props of my personality. The house of cards of my ego collapsed, and suddenly, for the first time in my adult life, I saw myself as a pure soul.
Wow, the house of cards collapsing.
Yeah, this illustrates the liberation found when the ego recedes, something Pooh seems to naturally embody. There's no performance, no facade.
Yeah.
He's not performing Pooh for anyone. He simply is Pooh.
That's true.
Furthermore, the Bhagavad Gita touches on the wisdom in letting things unfold, noting that God does not interfere with the little independence of the living entity.
Okay.
True devotion involves surrender unto the supersoul seated within his heart, with the confidence that Krishna will protect him from all difficulties. This is a profound trust, not a desperate striving for control, It's a trust that something larger than your individual ego is guiding the flow.
And this trust, this lack of need, ties into a fascinating idea from Conversations with God. Simply want nothing, have preferences, but no needs. This is described as a very high state of being. It is the place of masters.
That's a powerful distinction.
It really is. Pooh often has a preference for honey, obviously, or for a good friend, but he rarely needs it in a desperate, grasping way that upsets his inner peace or compromises his simple being. He might be sad for a moment if the honey pot is empty, but he quickly accepts what is and moves on, usually humming. This contentment, this lack of absolute attachment to outcomes, is a powerful form of humility and freedom. He knows the difference between a desire and a fundamental need, and that's a mastery many of us, struggle to achieve.
And this freedom from ego also makes Pooh surprisingly effective in action. It allows for a kind of light touch, a way of operating without undue force or interference. The Tao Te Ching, verse 60, offers a wonderful analogy for this.
Oh, which one?
It says, "Govern a nation as you would fry a small fish."
Fry a small fish. How does that relate?
Well, think about it. This isn't about indifference or neglect. It implies a gentle, minimal interference. You don't poke and prod a small fish endlessly when frying it, or you'll just ruin it, right?
Yeah, it'll fall apart.
Exactly. You let it cook gently, allowing the natural process to unfold, trusting the heat and the oil to do their work. This mirrors way empirically allowing things to happen, rather than forcing them, recognizing the inherent wisdom of the situation itself.
And I think many of us are constantly poking and prodding our lives, aren't we? Trying to get that perfect crispness, only to find we've burnt it or made a mess. It reminds me of Siddhartha's journey.
How so?
Well, after years of seeking enlightenment through rigorous intellectual and ascetic pursuits, he learns a profound lesson from a simple ferryman. The ferryman tells him that much can be learned from a river, having often listened to it, often looked into its eyes, and always learned from it.
Just by observing.
Just by observing and being with it. Pooh, living immersed in the 100 Acre Wood, is constantly attuned to nature. He just is part of it, not separate. Without conscious effort, he learns from it, embodies its effortless flow. It's not about grand philosophies or complex meditation techniques, but simple, direct, unassuming engagement with life. Much like the river's flow, he simply observes and experiences.
This concept of natural attunement and simplicity in action can be seen in other traditions as well, emphasizing profound trust over complex planning. Like in The Cost of Discipleship, it talks about the call to follow Jesus, which required single-minded obedience, leaving everything behind.
Right, a total commitment.
Total commitment. Only one thing was required in each case, to rely on Christ's word and cling to it as offering greater security than all the securities in the world. This single-mindedness, free of complex calculations and intellectual wrangling, is a form of profound simplicity and trust that bypasses the ego's machination.
That makes sense.
It's a direct, unmediated response to truth, much like Pooh's direct response to life's simple demands, like finding honey or helping a friend. He doesn't question the command of his own inner nature, his own simple being.
Now let's pivot to the other side of the 100 Acre Wood because it's such a great contrast. We find characters like Rabbit and Owl. These two are, a masterclass in the folly of overthinking and excessive cleverness.
Oh, absolutely.
While Pooh floats along in his wu-wei state, Rabbit is meticulously planning everything, organizing, scheduling, and often, frankly, to his own detriment. And Owl is constantly and sometimes incorrectly intellectualizing, puffing himself up with grand, often irrelevant pronouncements. They are the very antithesis of the uncarved block.
This is exactly where we see the ego's intricate traps at play. Our minds, when unchecked and overly focused on control, can become architects of illusion. The fifth agreement states something like, our greatest masterpiece of art is the use of a language to create an entire virtual reality within our mind, and this reality can be completely distorted.
A virtual reality in our
Yeah,
minds.
and this is precisely where rabbit and owl often reside. Rabbit, with his elaborate schedules, his insistence on things being just so, his endless to-do lists,
Always busy.
always busy. And owl, with his verbose, often self-important pronouncements about everything from spelling, usually misspelled, to history, meticulously construct their own virtual realities. These are worlds built on assumptions, expectations, and a desperate need for control and intellectual superiority. They are constantly trying to carve and shape reality to their own liking, rather than accepting it as it is.
And these mental constructions are often a direct product of the ego, aren't they? An attempt to define, to solidify, to control.
Absolutely. Of Course in Miracles is quite direct about this, saying something like, the ego is insane. It teaches that you are not what you are. It believes its goal of autonomy could be accomplished, but this is fundamentally impossible.
The goal of autonomy. It's interesting.
Yeah, the ego's desire to define oneself with boundaries, as Conversations with God explains, is a creation that ultimately limits our boundless being. Rabbit and owl are constantly trying to define, categorize, and control rather than simply being. Well, Rabbit defines himself by his garden and his meticulous plans. Owl defines himself by his cleverness and his knowledge. They are trapped by their own cleverness, by their intricate mental constructions, creating internal boundaries that lead to frustration, anxiety, and often unhappiness.
And this distortion leads directly to conflict, both internal and external, right? When we're living in these self-made virtual realities, we're not truly engaging with the world as it is, but as we think it should be, or as we interpret it through our ego's often distorted lens.
Precisely. The fifth agreement emphasizes that all conflict is the result of lies, because the truth has no conflict at all. Lies, it says, are our creation, that we give them life and make them real in the virtual reality of our mind.
So conflict comes from our own mental stories.
Essentially, yes. This is the realm of assumptions and overanalysis, which we frequently observe in Rabbit's frantic planning or Owl's intellectual pronouncements that sometimes completely miss the obvious truth. Remember the time Rabbit tried to organize everyone for an expedition to find the North Pole?
Oh, the chaos.
Exactly. Creating elaborate plans that only confused everyone. His internal narratives, built on cleverness rather than clarity, inevitably lead to friction, misunderstanding, and often needless suffering for themselves and those around them. They create problems where none actually exist, simply by overanalyzing and over-controlling.
You know, Siddhartha's journey really highlights the limitations of purely intellectual pursuits, a trap that Owl often falls into so perfectly. Siddhartha, after years of intense study and asceticism, realized he had never really found this self because he had wanted to capture it in the net of thought.
The net of thought. That's a great phrase.
Isn't it? He was surrounded by beauty and truth by the river, by simple people, but hadn't been with it. He hadn't truly experienced it directly. This perfectly mirrors Owl's reliance on learned wisdom and grand pronouncements, which can often be a net of thought, preventing direct, authentic experience. He has all the words, maybe, but sometimes misses the feeling or the simple truth right in front of him.
And this over-reliance on understanding, while useful at certain stages of development, well, it isn't the highest state of being. Interior Castle, a profound work by St. Teresa of Avila, describes how most of the souls which dwell in the mansions already described are familiar with these feelings of devotion, for they labor with the understanding almost continuously and make use of it in their meditations.
So they're using their intellect in their spiritual practice.
Yes, but the implication is that while intellectual engagement is a necessary step, true spiritual progress moves beyond mere intellectualizing to a direct, unmediated experience, a knowing that transcends thought. Owl's continuous laboring with his understanding, his constant need to analyze and explain, kind of keeps him in a perpetual state of almost grasping the truth rather than experiencing it directly.
Right.
He's always at the edge of the pool, describing the water in great detail, but rarely actually jumping in.
That's a great image. And if that intellectual activity isn't regulated, if it becomes an end in itself, it can actually lead you astray, becoming a kind of devil of deception, as some traditions warn.
Absolutely. Dark Night of the Soul by St. John of the Cross warns that in certain spiritual states, when the soul relies too much on its own faculties, the devil and their own fancy very commonly practice deceptions on them. Wow! The text stresses that the soul never strays save through its desires or its tastes or its reflections or its understanding or its affections. This really emphasizes how mental activity, if unchecked and driven by egoic cleverness rather than deep intuition, can lead to complex schemes and misinterpretations.
Like rabbits' plans.
Exactly like rabbits' overcomplicated plans that almost always go awry, or owls misread signs and pronouncements. Rabbit's careful planning, born of cleverness, often backfires because he's trying to force an outcome, to impose his will, rather than allowing things to unfold naturally. The very act of striving for intellectual control can blind one to simpler, more profound truths.
This tendency towards tampering and control, rather than simply allowing things to be, is addressed so directly in the Tao Te Ching with remarkable clarity.
It is indeed. Verse 29 states, "The world is Tao's own vessel. It is perfection manifest. It cannot be changed. It cannot be improved."
Cannot be improved. That challenges everything we're usually told.
Right. It continues, "For those who go on tampering, it's ruined. For those who try to grasp, it's gone." This is a direct commentary on characters like Rabbit, who constantly try to organize, manage, and improve everything in the Hundred Acre Wood.
He's always tampering.
Always tampering. He tries to control the weather, the growth of his carrots, the very social order of his friends. His efforts, born of a clever but ultimately flawed desire for control, often lead to chaotic results rather than genuine improvement. He tampers, and things get ruined.
And at the root of this tampering is often pride and self-will, isn't it? A belief that our intellect or our efforts are somehow superior to the natural flow of things.
Precisely. Theologia Germanica links the desire to understand God's secret counsel, or, to impose one's own will on everything, to sheer pride and self-will, which is so contrary to God and the eternal will.
Sheer pride.
Yeah. This hubris, often masked as cleverness or efficiency, actively hinders true understanding and alignment with the natural order. Rabbit's cleverness is often tied to his sense of importance and his belief that he knows best, preventing him from recognizing the inherent perfection in things as they are. He always thinks he can do it better, which leads to endless striving and, ultimately, frustration.
This takes us back to the burden of being caught up in the illusion of past and future, something we discussed earlier with Pooh. Overthinking, which is Rabbit and Owl's default mode, means constantly dwelling on what was or anxiously planning what will be rather than engaging with the present moment.
It's a mental trap, pure and simple. Conversations with God reiterates how being caught up in the illusion of past and future prevents seeing the truth that's right here, right now. Their cleverness, in this context, becomes a treadmill of mental activity rather than a path to peace or effective action. Rabbit is always fretting about what might happen to his garden or what should have been done yesterday. Owl is constantly recalling past facts or predicting future events, often inaccurately. They're always in their heads, rarely in the effortless flow of the present, which is the only place true wisdom and peace can actually be found. Their cleverness, in essence, becomes a barrier to wisdom.
So if Pooh's simplicity offers profound wisdom and a path to peace, and Rabbit and Owl's cleverness leads to pitfalls of anxiety and ineffective striving, where's the sweet spot? How do we find balance in our own lives, navigating complexity with a Pooh-like grace without completely abandoning our intellect? It can't be about becoming a bear of very little brain in a literal sense, can it?
That's the crucial question, isn't it? And no, it's certainly not about intellectual regression or becoming simplistic. It's about discerning how and when to use our intellect, and, crucially, how to temper it with deeper wisdom. The path to clarity and discernment often begins with learning to listen to the inner voice, rather than solely relying on external validation or intellectual calculation. Siddhartha, on his journey, found true guidance not in external commands or the teachings of others, but by obeying a voice in his own heart.
Just his own heart.
Yeah. He realized to obey like this, not to an external command, only to the voice, to be ready like this was good, this was necessary, nothing else was necessary. This is the key to authentic action, a clarity that cuts through the noise of clever calculation. It's about trusting and intrinsic knowing.
So imagine Rabbit.
Right, imagine Rabbit meticulously planning his day, consulting every almanac and weather report. What if, just for a moment, he paused and listened to his own feeling about what truly needed doing, rather than what his clever mind dictated? That internal compass might lead to less friction and more genuinely effective action.
That's a huge shift, isn't it? From seeking answers externally or through sheer cleverness to an internal discernment that's perhaps more aligned with Pooh's natural impulses. And part of that clarity comes from distinguishing truth from lies, especially the lies we tell ourselves through our own mental constructs.
Absolutely. The fifth agreement tells us that the real conflict is between the truth and lies. And crucially, the truth has no conflict at all. It just exists whether we believe in it or not.
Right.
The moment we start believing our own carefully constructed virtual realities, those mental prisons rabbit and owl often inhabit, we step away from truth and into conflict. Cultivating awareness of our beliefs helps us see everything you believe, and this is how you live your life.
Seeing our own programming.
Exactly. This mental clarity allows us to cut through the complexities created by our own overthinking and the illusions it fosters. We stop taking things so personally when we understand that others, like Rabbit with his anxieties or Owl with his pronouncements, often operate from their own internal, often distorted virtual realities. It's about seeing beyond the cleverness to the underlying patterns.
And this discernment is deeply intertwined with cultivating compassion and non-judgment. It's hard to be compassionate when you're caught up in judging someone's perceived folly or cleverness, isn't it?
It's impossible, really. Conversations with God highlights that compassion never ends, love never stops, patience never runs out in God's world. It also profoundly states no one does anything evil, given his model of the world.
Given his model of the world, that's key.
It is key. This encourages us to shift from judging others' perceived folly, like Rabbit's franticness or Owl's pomposity, to understanding the underlying models that drive their behavior. Rabbit isn't intentionally trying to complicate things. He's likely driven by anxiety and a model of the world where control equals safety. Owl isn't trying to be deliberately misleading. He's probably driven by a model where intellectual authority is paramount for him. This shift dissolves fear and disdain, ushering in what the seat of the soul calls reverence. When we see beyond the earth suit, beyond the outward displays of cleverness or frantic activity, we can feel compassion and see the soul. This allows us to interact with their behavior, perhaps, rather than just react to their personality.
This sounds like a journey to true self-knowing, a dismantling of the rigid self we often construct, that ego Pooh seems to be so refreshingly free of. We identify so strongly with our thoughts, our cleverness, our roles.
Indeed. Radical acceptance asks us to consider, is there anything or self you perceive that is static, solid, or enduring? Is there entity that exists apart from the changing stream of feelings, sensations, or thoughts?
That's a deep question.
It's a powerful question that challenges our fundamental assumptions about who we think we are. We tend to cling to a fixed idea of me, I'm clever, I am organized, I am always right. But if we look closely, as the practice suggests, it's just a constantly changing stream. Right. And waking up notes that experiencing the intrinsic selflessness of consciousness requires considerable training, as consciousness is prior to it, a mere witness of it, and therefore free of it in principle. Letting go of the rigid idea of self, the ego that Rabbit and Owl cling to so tightly, is incredibly liberating.
How so?
It's an understanding that our true essence is vaster and more fluid than our ordinary waking consciousness often suggests. We can glimpse something about the nature of consciousness itself that liberates us from suffering and from the need to constantly define and defend ourselves, which takes up so much energy.
What's amazing is that this journey doesn't seem to lead to a loss of identity or becoming nobody, but rather to the embrace of a unique purpose, a dharma, that is authentic to you. It's not about being less, but about being more truly yourself.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it. The 7 spiritual laws of success states that you have a unique talent and a unique way of expressing it. There is something that you can do better than anyone else in the whole world.
Everyone has a unique talent.
Yes. And this purpose, your dharma, emerges from authenticity, not from trying to be clever or prove yourself, as Rabbit or Owl might constantly be doing. It's about being your true self, like Pooh, and letting that natural expression unfold without the ego's constant interference. Pooh doesn't try to be a clever bear or an organized bear. He simply is a bear who loves honey and helping his friends, and in that simplicity, he fulfills his unique role perfectly in the 100 Acre Wood. Our true purpose often arises not from frantic searching or strategizing, but from simply being and allowing.
And this period we're in, some describe it as an evolution revolution. Conversations with God points out that more people than ever before are aware of the power of the mind, their interconnectedness with all things, and their real identity as a spiritual being.
That feels true, doesn't it? There's a shift happening.
It does. This isn't just a philosophical idea. This means we are becoming conscious participants in our own evolution. We are creating the quality of our experience by living from that spiritual space, rather than being driven by unconscious reactions or the endless loop of overthinking that ensnares Rabbit and Owl. It's a call to conscious participation, to choose Pooh's path, or rather maybe to recognize it within ourselves.
And this brings us to the profound shift from head to heart, which is really where the balance lies, I think. Intellectual understanding, the kind Owl prizes so much, is a valuable starting point. It can illuminate concepts and point directions.
Sure.
But true transformation happens through direct experience and a fundamental shift in being, moving from merely knowing about something to embodying it. Ram Dass's experience with his guru is such a powerful example of this.
Right, the mind reading versus the love.
Exactly. While his guru's mind reading softened me up, it was the love that opened my heart, as he put it. This shows that while logic and intellect can prepare the ground, it's the opening of the heart, the direct experience of love and connection, that truly moves us beyond mere cleverness to profound transformation. It's moving from knowing about Taoism to being Taoist in the simple, present, accepting, Pooh-like sense. It's about integrating the intellectual with the intuitive, the mind with the heart.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's really clear that the seemingly simple world of Winnie the Pooh, as interpreted so brilliantly by Benjamin Hoff, offers a remarkably accessible entry point into some very profound spiritual wisdom. Pooh's uncomplicated, accepting nature, his embodiment of wu-wei, the uncarved block, the presence of the eternal, now stands in such stark and often funny contrast to the overthinking, frantic striving, and excessive cleverness that often ensnare characters like Rabbit and Owl.
And we've seen how these simple principles are not isolated to Taoism, but are echoed across a really wide array of spiritual teachings, haven't we? From the gentle surrender encouraged in the power of now and conversations with God, to the single-minded obedience mentioned in the cost of discipleship, and the wisdom found in nature as described in Siddhartha.
Yeah, the connections are everywhere.
These aren't abstract concepts floating out there. They're practical approaches to living that apply directly to our modern, often way overcomplicated lives. They challenge us to reconsider where we place our energy and our trust in our frantic planning or in a deeper flow.
And for you, our listener, this means maybe considering where in your own life you might be acting more like Rabbit or Owl, endlessly planning, analyzing, trying to control every outcome, perhaps getting caught in that net of thought, as Siddhartha realized.
We all do it.
We all do it. And then where might you cultivate more of Pooh's wisdom, his ability to simply be, to accept what is, to move with natural flow, and to trust that life, like the river, has its own profound wisdom? What small space can you create today, maybe even right now, for just being?
Let's leave you with this provocative thought from the Tao Te Ching, verse 29, which we heard earlier, but it really deserves a final reflection, I think.
Okay.
The world is Tao's own vessel. It is perfection manifest. It cannot be changed. It cannot be improved. For those who go on tampering, it's ruined. For those who try to grasp, it's gone.
It cannot be improved. Think about that.
Right.
What does this truly mean for our endless pursuit of improvement in every aspect of life, from our personal selves, our bodies, our relationships, to our grand societal ambitions? We live in a culture that constantly tells us to strive, to optimize, to fix, to upgrade.
Always pushing.
Always pushing. But what if the greatest improvement we could make is to simply allow things to be? To recognize the inherent perfection, the uncarved block that exists already within ourselves and within the world around us, even amidst the chaos. What if, like Pooh, our deepest wisdom comes from simply letting go of the need to tamper and grasp? Something to ponder as you navigate your own 100-acre wood.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the surprising and I think enduring wisdom of a bear of very little brain.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and maybe, just maybe, let yourself be a little more like Pooh today.